I never thought I would be the villain of my own story. You spend your whole life watching movies, reading books, hearing about people who betray others, and you tell yourself you are different. You tell yourself you would never do that. You would never be capable of that kind of cruelty. You look at those people with contempt and think, what is wrong with them? How could anyone hurt someone who trusted them? And then one day, you wake up and realize you have become exactly what you despised. My name is Marcus Cole. I am 34 years old, and I am the man who destroyed his best friend and never had the courage to fix what I broke. This is not a story about revenge. This is not a story about someone who wronged me. This is a confession. The kind of confession I should have made 7 years ago when I still had the chance to make things right. The kind of confession I was too much of a coward to give. I have carried this weight for so long that it has become a part of me. It has shaped my marriage, my career, my sleepless nights. It has turned me into someone I do not recognize when I look in the mirror. And now, with my father dying in a hospital bed 3 floors above me and my entire life falling apart around me, I have finally accepted that I cannot run anymore. So let me tell you about Daniel Reeves. Let me tell you about the best friend I ever had, and let me tell you exactly how I destroyed him. Danny and I met when we were 7 years old. It was the first day of 2nd grade at Riverside Elementary in Chicago, and I was the new kid. My family had just moved from Ohio because my father got transferred to a new office. I did not know anyone. I did not know the neighborhood. I did not know how to make friends in a place where everyone already had them. I remember standing in the corner of the playground during recess, watching the other kids play, feeling that hollow ache of loneliness that only children understand in its purest form. Adults develop coping mechanisms. Adults learn to mask their isolation. But children feel it raw and unfiltered, like a wound that will not stop bleeding. That was when Danny walked up to me. He was a skinny kid with messy brown hair and a gap between his front teeth. He was wearing a faded Spider-Man t-shirt that was clearly a hand-me-down, and he had grass stains on his knees from some earlier adventure. He looked at me with these big brown eyes full of nothing but curiosity and warmth. "Hey," he said, "you look like you need a friend." Just like that. No games. No testing me first. No making me prove myself worthy of his attention. Just a simple, genuine offer of friendship from a kid who had no reason to give it, except that he could see I needed it. That was Danny. That was always Danny. I nodded at him, too shy to speak. And he smiled this huge, goofy grin and said, "Cool. I'm Danny. Want to play kickball?" We were inseparable after that. The thing you have to understand about Danny is that he was the kind of person who made everyone around him feel seen. He had this gift, this natural warmth that drew people in. He was not the smartest kid in class. He was not the most athletic. He was not the most popular in the traditional sense, but he had something far more valuable than any of that. He had genuine kindness. And in a world that seemed determined to stamp that out of people, Danny held onto it with both hands. Through elementary school, middle school, and high school, Danny was my constant. When my parents went through their brutal divorce when I was 14, Danny was there. He did not offer empty platitudes or try to fix things. He just showed up at my house with video games and snacks and sat with me in silence when I needed silence, talked with me when I needed to talk, and made me laugh when I forgot how. When his father lost his job and his family struggled for 2 years to keep their house, I watched Danny take on odd jobs, mowing lawns, washing cars, delivering newspapers to help his parents make ends meet. He never complained. He never asked for sympathy. He just did what needed to be done with a quiet dignity that made me admire him even more. We went to the same college, roomed together freshman year, and supported each other through every trial that came our way. When I failed my first major exam and wanted to drop out, Danny stayed up all night helping me study for the retake. When he went through a devastating breakup junior year, I held him while he cried and did not judge him for being vulnerable. We were brothers, not by blood, but by choice. And that, I have learned, is sometimes the strongest bond of all. Or so I thought. After college, our paths diverged slightly but never truly separated. I went into corporate finance, drawn by the promise of stability and the pressure from my father to make something impressive of myself. Danny went the entrepreneurial route, following his dream of starting his own business. It was a tech startup, a modest one at first, operating out of his apartment with nothing but a laptop and a vision. Danny had an idea for a software platform that would help small businesses manage their inventory and customer relationships without the expense of enterprise-level solutions. It was not revolutionary in concept, but Danny had this uncanny ability to understand what small business owners actually needed because he had grown up watching his parents struggle with exactly those challenges. For 3 years, he poured everything into that company. He worked 18-hour days. He sacrificed relationships, vacations, any semblance of work-life balance. He took out loans that made me nervous just hearing about them. And slowly, painfully, he built something real. By the time we were both 27, Danny's company, Reeves Solutions, was starting to gain real traction. He had 15 employees. He had clients across 3 states. He was not rich by any means, but he was successful. More importantly, he was happy, and I was jealous. That is the first ugly truth I need to confess. I was jealous of my best friend's success, not in an obvious way, not in a way I would have admitted even to myself at the time. But looking back, I can trace the poison to its source. While Danny was building something of his own, something meaningful, I was climbing the corporate ladder at a financial consulting firm, making good money, but feeling increasingly empty with every rung I ascended. I told myself I was the practical one. I told myself I was the smart one for taking the safe path. But every time I saw Danny's face light up as he talked about his company, every time I watched him solve a problem with creativity and passion, I felt something dark stir in the pit of my stomach. I did not recognize it as jealousy then. I called it frustration with my own career. I called it stress. I called it dissatisfaction. But it was jealousy, pure and simple. And jealousy, when left unchecked, is one of the most corrosive emotions a human being can harbor. The year I turned 28, 2 things happened that would set the stage for my betrayal. First, I met Victor Hartley. Victor was a partner at my firm. He was 52 years old, impeccably dressed, silver-haired, and possessed of a charm that could make you feel like the most important person in the room. He had built his career on identifying opportunities and exploiting them with ruthless efficiency. He was everything I thought I wanted to be. He started taking an interest in me. At first, I was flattered. Out of all the junior associates, Victor had chosen me for special attention. He invited me to lunches, asked my opinions on deals, introduced me to important clients. He made me feel like I was destined for greatness if I just stayed on the path he was carving for me. What I did not understand, what I was too naive and eager to understand, was that Victor did not mentor people out of generosity. He cultivated assets. He identified people with potential and shaped them into tools that would serve his purposes. I was being groomed. I just did not see it. The second thing that happened was that Danny fell in love. Her name was Rachel, and she was everything Danny deserved. Smart, warm, funny, with a directness that complemented Danny's more gentle approach to life. She was a pediatric nurse, and the way she talked about her work reminded me of the way Danny talked about his company, with genuine passion and purpose. I was his best man at their wedding. I gave a speech about 21 years of friendship, about the kid who walked up to a lonely boy on a playground and changed his life. I meant every word of it. Danny and Rachel bought a modest house in the suburbs. A year later, they had a daughter named Emma. And watching Danny become a father, watching him hold that little girl with such tender devotion, should have filled me with nothing but happiness for my friend. Instead, I felt that jealousy twist deeper. Danny had everything: a successful business, a loving wife, a beautiful daughter, a sense of purpose and fulfillment that radiated from him like light. And I had a career that felt increasingly hollow, a string of relationships that never went anywhere, and a growing resentment that I buried deeper with every passing day. I should have talked to someone. I should have talked to Danny. He would have listened. He would have helped me work through these feelings without judgment. That was who he was. But I did not talk to anyone. I kept it all inside, and the poison kept spreading. Then, Victor Hartley made me an offer. It was a Thursday afternoon in late November. Victor called me into his office, that corner suite with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. He was standing at the window when I walked in, silhouetted against the gray winter sky. "Close the door, Marcus," he said without turning around. "We need to talk about your future." I closed the door. My heart was pounding with anticipation. I thought this was it. I thought I was about to be promoted. Victor turned and looked at me with those calculating gray eyes. "How long have you known Daniel Reeves?" The question caught me off guard. "Danny? Since we were kids. Why?" Victor smiled. It was not a warm smile. "His company has been growing impressively, Reeves Solutions. It's positioned in an interesting market segment." "Yeah," I said cautiously. "Danny's worked incredibly hard to build it." "Indeed." Victor walked to his desk and picked up a folder. "We've been watching his company for some time. A client of ours, a larger player in the enterprise software space, is interested in acquiring smaller competitors to consolidate market share." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Okay." "The challenge," Victor continued, "is that Reeves Solutions is privately held. Your friend Daniel owns a controlling stake. He has been approached before by potential buyers and has declined every offer. He seems attached to maintaining independence." That was Danny. He had built his company from nothing. It was his baby. Of course, he would not want to sell it to some faceless corporation. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, even though some part of me already knew. Victor set down the folder and looked at me directly. "You're his closest friend. You have access to information about his business that no one else does, his financials, his client relationships, his operational challenges." "Victor, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal," Victor interrupted smoothly. "I'm simply asking you to share insights, information that would help our client understand Reeves Solutions' value and vulnerabilities, information that would make an acquisition more feasible." I should have walked out of that office. I should have told Victor exactly where he could put his proposal. I should have gone straight to Danny and warned him that there were sharks circling, but I did not. I hesitated, and Victor saw that hesitation. He was a predator after all. He knew how to recognize weakness. "This would be very good for your career, Marcus," he said softly. "Partnership track, 6 figures added to your compensation, the kind of future you've been working toward." The silence stretched between us. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. "I need to think about it," I finally said. Victor nodded as if this was exactly what he expected. "Take a week." "But Marcus..." He paused until I met his eyes. "Opportunities like this don't come often, and men who hesitate too long tend to get left behind." I walked out of that office feeling like I was going to be sick. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. I kept running through the conversation in my mind, trying to find a way to make it acceptable. Victor had said it was not illegal. He was just asking for information, insights. Companies gathered competitive intelligence all the time, right? But I knew it was wrong. Deep down, in the place where my conscience had not yet been fully silenced, I knew exactly what Victor was asking me to do. He was asking me to betray my best friend. And here is the part that haunts me most. The part I have spent 7 years trying to forget, trying to rationalize, trying to excuse. I did it anyway. I called Victor 4 days later and told him I was in. The self-justifications came easily at first. I told myself I was not actually hurting Danny. I was just sharing information. If his company was solid, there was nothing to worry about. I told myself that an acquisition might actually be good for him. He could cash out, spend more time with Rachel and Emma. I told myself that Danny did not need to know, and what he did not know would not hurt him. Every lie we tell ourselves sounds reasonable in the moment. Over the next several months, I became Victor's inside source on Reeves Solutions. Danny trusted me completely. Why would he not? We had been best friends for over 2 decades. When I asked about his business, he thought I was just being a supportive friend. When I asked about his financials, he assumed I was offering my expertise to help him. He had no idea I was feeding every detail to the people who wanted to destroy him. I learned about his key clients, which ones were locked in with long-term contracts, which ones were vulnerable to being poached. I learned about his operational challenges, the cash flow crunch he was managing, the difficulty he was having finding qualified developers. I learned about his strategic plans, his roadmap for the next 3 years, the markets he was planning to expand into. And I gave all of it to Victor. Victor's client, a company called Meridian Technologies, used that information systematically. They started approaching Danny's most vulnerable clients with aggressive offers. They poached 2 of his best developers by offering salaries he could not match. They began competing in his market segments with predatory pricing that only a company with Meridian's resources could sustain. Danny was confused at first, then frustrated, then increasingly desperate. I watched it all happen. I watched my best friend's dream start to crumble, and I said nothing. I offered sympathetic words. I pretended to be outraged by the unfairness of it all. And every night, I went home and tried to drink enough to silence the voice in my head that told me I was a monster. The worst part, the part that I still cannot fully process, was how much Danny trusted me through all of it. When things got bad enough that he needed advice, he came to me, his best friend with the finance background. Surely I could help him figure out what was happening and how to survive it. I sat in his living room with Rachel's home-cooked dinner in my stomach and little Emma showing me her drawings, and I gave him advice that I knew would not help. I pointed him in directions that I knew were dead ends. I helped him burn through his remaining resources on strategies that I knew would fail, all while reporting back to Victor on exactly what Danny was planning. I was not just betraying him, I was actively participating in his destruction. The acquisition offer came 8 months after my initial conversation with Victor. Meridian Technologies approached Danny with a buyout proposal that was, on paper, generous. But by that point, Danny's company had been so thoroughly weakened that even the generous offer represented a fraction of what Reeves Solutions had been worth before I started feeding information to Victor. Danny came to me, devastated, holding the offer letter in his trembling hands. "They want everything," he said, his voice hollow. "The company, the client relationships, the intellectual property. They're even asking me to sign a non-compete that would prevent me from working in this industry for 5 years. I looked at my best friend, at the broken man he had become, and I felt something crack inside me. For just a moment, the truth almost came out. For just a moment, I almost confessed everything. But then I thought about Victor. I thought about the partnership I had been promised. I thought about my career, my future, my own desperate ambition, and the moment passed. "Maybe you should take it," I said quietly. "Get out while you can still get something for all your work." Danny looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "This company is everything I built. It's my legacy for Emma. I can't just hand it over to people who don't care about any of that." "I know," I said, "but sometimes we have to accept reality." Accept reality. As if I was just an innocent bystander observing his misfortune rather than the architect of it. Danny fought for 2 more months. He tried restructuring. He tried finding investors. He tried everything he could think of to save what he had built. But every option failed, partly due to his circumstances, and partly due to the fact that Victor had people blocking him at every turn. Finally, exhausted and broken, Danny signed the acquisition agreement. He sold Reeves Solutions to Meridian Technologies for 1/3 of its peak value. The non-compete would keep him out of the industry he loved for 5 years. His employees were absorbed into Meridian's workforce, and most of them were laid off within the year as the company consolidated operations. Danny walked away with enough money to pay off his debts and keep his family afloat for a while. But his spirit, that bright, optimistic, unquenchable spirit that had defined him since childhood, was shattered. I got my partnership. Victor delivered exactly what he promised. My salary increased. My status increased. I had achieved everything I thought I wanted, and I hated myself more than I thought possible. The first year after the acquisition was the hardest. Danny fell into a depression that frightened everyone who loved him. He withdrew from friends and family. He spent days in bed, unable to face the world. Rachel called me multiple times, desperate for advice on how to help him, and I offered hollow words while choking on my guilt. I told myself the worst was over. I told myself Danny would recover eventually. I told myself that time would heal these wounds and things would somehow be okay. I was lying to myself, of course. That is what people like me do. We construct elaborate justifications to avoid facing the truth of what we have become. But the truth has a way of leaking through the cracks. It started with small things. I could not sleep without alcohol. I could not look at my reflection without feeling sick. I could not hear Danny's name without my chest tightening with shame. I started having panic attacks, sudden, overwhelming waves of terror that left me gasping for breath and convinced I was dying. I went to a therapist. I told her about my stress, my insomnia, my anxiety. I told her everything except the one thing that was actually causing all of it, because admitting that would mean facing what I had done, and I was still too much of a coward for that. The years passed. Danny slowly climbed out of his depression, though he was never quite the same. That brightness had dimmed. That easy warmth had grown more guarded. He took a job at a tech company, not as an entrepreneur, just as an employee. It paid the bills, but I could see that part of him had died. Our friendship survived, but it changed. Danny was more distant, more reserved. He did not confide in me the way he used to. Part of me was relieved. Less intimacy meant less opportunity for my guilt to surface, but another part of me mourned the loss of what we had been. Rachel, too, had changed. She looked at me differently. There was a coolness in her eyes that had not been there before. At the time, I told myself she was just protective of Danny, still processing what their family had been through. But looking back, I wonder if she suspected something. Women like Rachel have instincts that men like me underestimate. I got married during this period. Her name was Sophie, and she was a lawyer I met at a professional conference. She was smart, ambitious, practical, a good match on paper, but even on our wedding day, standing at the altar promising to love and cherish her, I knew something was fundamentally broken in me. Sophie deserved better than what I could give her. She deserved a husband who was fully present, fully honest, fully committed. Instead, she got a man hollowed out by guilt, numbed by alcohol, and emotionally unavailable in ways she could not understand. She tried. God, she tried. She asked me what was wrong. She suggested couples therapy. She created space for me to open up and share whatever was haunting me. And every time I deflected. I blamed work stress. I blamed my difficult relationship with my father. I blamed anything and everything except the truth. The truth would have meant telling her that the man she married had destroyed his best friend for a promotion, that the life we were building together was constructed on a foundation of betrayal and cowardice. She would have left me, and I could not have blamed her. So I said nothing, and the distance between us grew wider with each passing year. 5 years after the acquisition, Danny and I saw each other less and less. Our friendship had become a series of occasional dinners, obligatory birthday calls, and Christmas cards. The bond that had once been unbreakable had withered into something barely recognizable. Emma was 12 by then. I remember running into them at a shopping mall, Danny, Rachel, and Emma, during the holidays. Emma had grown so much. She was not a little girl anymore. She was becoming a young woman, and she had her father's eyes. Rachel barely acknowledged me. Danny was polite, but reserved. And as we made awkward small talk, I realized something that cut me to the core. They had moved on. Not from what happened, that would never fully heal, but from me. I was no longer central to their lives. I had faded from best friend to acquaintance, from family to stranger, and I had done it to myself. That night, I went home and drank until I passed out. Sophie found me on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m. She did not say anything. She just looked at me with this expression of weary resignation. The look of a woman who had accepted that the man she married was disappearing, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. My marriage deteriorated. Sophie and I stopped fighting because we stopped caring enough to fight. We became roommates, then strangers, sharing a house but nothing else. The silence between us was suffocating. And Danny, the one person I had always been able to count on, the one constant in my chaotic life, was gone. Not dead, but gone to me. Lost through my own choices, my own betrayal, my own cowardice. I started thinking about confession, about telling the truth, about finally releasing the secret that had been poisoning me for years. But every time I got close, fear stopped me. Fear of losing my career, fear of losing my marriage, fear of losing the reputation I had carefully constructed, fear of facing who I really was. So I stayed silent, and the years kept passing. Then, 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was my mother. My father had collapsed at home and was being rushed to the hospital. Initial tests suggested a massive stroke, and the doctors were not optimistic. I drove to the hospital in a fog. My father and I had never been close. He was a stern, demanding man who showed love through criticism and measured his children's worth by their achievements. But he was still my father, and the prospect of losing him stirred up feelings I had been suppressing for decades. When I arrived, my mother was in the waiting room, small and fragile in a way I had never seen before. She had always been the strong one in their marriage, the one who held everything together. But in that moment, she looked every one of her 68 years. "He's been asking for you," she said quietly. "He's in and out of consciousness, but when he's lucid, he keeps asking for you." I went into his room. My father looked like a stranger. Tubes everywhere, machines beeping. His robust frame diminished to something frail and broken. His eyes were closed, but when I sat beside his bed and took his hand, they fluttered open. "Marcus," he rasped. His voice was barely audible. "I'm here, Dad." He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes clearer than I expected. "I need to tell you something," he said, "before it's too late." I leaned closer, thinking he was going to say he loved me, or that he was proud of me, or some other deathbed sentiment that might finally bridge the gap between us. Instead, he said something that knocked the breath out of me. "I know what you did to Daniel." I froze. My heart stopped. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. "What?" I whispered. "I know," he repeated. His grip on my hand tightened with surprising strength. "Victor Hartley told me. Years ago, he was bragging about it at a dinner party, about how he had manipulated you into betraying your closest friend." I could not speak. I could not breathe. "I've carried that knowledge for 6 years," my father continued, his voice weakening. "I didn't say anything because I was ashamed of you and of myself for raising a son who could do such a thing." Tears were streaming down my face. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But my father's grip held me in place. "You have to make it right," he said, "before it's too late, before you end up like me, dying with a lifetime of regrets and no time left to fix them." His eyes closed. The machines beeped steadily. He was unconscious again. The moment of clarity passed. I sat there for hours, holding his hand, crying silently, my entire world crumbling around me. My father knew. He had known for years, and he had been too ashamed to confront me about it. Like father, like son. That night, I did not go home to Sophie. I could not face her. I could not face anyone. I drove around the city for hours, replaying every decision, every lie, every moment where I could have chosen differently and did not. I ended up parked outside Danny's house. The lights were on inside. Through the windows, I could see movement. Danny and Rachel and Emma going about their evening routine. Normal, ordinary, a family that had survived what I did to them. I sat in my car and watched for I do not know how long. At some point, Danny walked past the window. He was older now, his hair graying at the temples, his face lined with the years that had passed. But there was something in his posture that surprised me. He was smiling, laughing at something someone said, looking despite everything, like a man who had found his way back to something resembling happiness. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Danny had survived. Not just survived, he had rebuilt. He had found a new job, a new path. He had kept his family together. He had raised his daughter. He had done all of this despite what I had taken from him. He was stronger than me. He had always been stronger than me. Not in the way I used to define strength, ambition, achievement, success, but in the way that actually mattered. He had resilience. He had integrity. He had the ability to face adversity and emerge still capable of love, still capable of joy. I was the weak one. I had always been the weak one. Too weak to resist temptation. Too weak to tell the truth, too weak to face the consequences of my actions. I drove away without knocking on his door. I was not ready yet, but something had shifted inside me. I spent the next week visiting my father every day. He drifted in and out of consciousness, never fully lucid again, never able to say more about what he knew, but his words echoed in my head constantly. Make it right, before it's too late. Sophie noticed the change in me. She asked if I was okay, and for the first time in years, I almost told her the truth. But I could not yet. There was an order to this that I needed to follow. The first person who deserved the truth was Danny. 3 days ago, I finally made the call. Danny answered on the second ring. Marcus? His voice was wary. We had not spoken in months. Danny, I need to see you. There's something I have to tell you, something I should have told you years ago. There was a long pause. Is everything okay? Your father? He's still in the hospital, but that's not what this is about. I took a deep breath. Can we meet? Tomorrow, if you're free. Somewhere private. Another pause. Longer this time. Sure, he finally said. There's a park near my house, the bench by the old oak tree. You know the one. I knew the one. We used to sit there as teenagers, talking about our futures, making plans for lives that seemed infinite with possibility. I'll be there, I said. I did not sleep that night. I stayed up writing this confession, trying to find the words that could convey what I had done and why. Every sentence felt inadequate. How do you apologize for destroying someone's life? How do you explain the chain of small choices that led to such devastating consequences? But I wrote it all down anyway, because Danny deserved to know, and because I could not carry this weight anymore. The meeting is tomorrow. In 12 hours, I will sit on that bench and tell Danny the truth about what happened to his company, about Victor Hartley and Meridian Technologies and the information I fed them, about every moment where I chose my own advancement over his well-being. I do not know what will happen after that. He might hit me. I would deserve it. He might cry. He might walk away and never speak to me again. He might forgive me, though I cannot imagine why he would. Whatever happens, I need him to know, not for absolution. I am not seeking forgiveness. What I did is beyond forgiveness, but Danny deserves the truth. He deserves to understand why his company really failed. He deserves to know that the universe did not randomly turn against him. Someone who claimed to love him chose to betray him instead. And maybe, just maybe, telling him will help him heal in some final way. Maybe knowing the truth will allow him to let go of any lingering doubts or self-blame. Maybe he can take that truth and use it to see even more clearly how much he has rebuilt despite the unfairness of what happened to him. That is my hope. That is the only redemption I dare to imagine, not for myself, but for him. There is one more thing I need to confess, one more truth that makes the story even worse. Victor Hartley approached me again 3 years ago, another acquisition target. Another young entrepreneur with a promising company, another opportunity for me to trade someone else's dreams for my own advancement. And I almost did it again. I sat in Victor's office, listening to his pitch, feeling the familiar pull of ambition and insecurity. He dangled the same rewards: money, status, power. He spoke in the same seductive tones about opportunity and career trajectory, and I wavered. For about 30 seconds, I actually considered doing it again. considered finding another victim, extracting another set of secrets, facilitating another corporate destruction. Because old habits are hard to break. Because the part of me that craved validation and success had never fully disappeared. But then I thought about Danny. I thought about his face when he signed those acquisition papers. I thought about Rachel's worried calls about his depression. I thought about little Emma asking why her daddy was so sad. I thought about the 21 years of friendship I had incinerated for a partnership I did not even want anymore. And I said no. I told Victor I was not interested. He looked surprised. People did not say no to him often. He tried to pressure me, to threaten me with implications about my future at the firm. But I was done. I was not brave enough to expose him. I was not strong enough to blow the whistle on the predatory practices I had been part of. But I was at least no longer willing to participate. It was not enough. I know that. Saying no to one more betrayal does not erase the first one. But it was something. A tiny step back toward being someone I could tolerate seeing in the mirror. I left the firm 6 months later. Victor made my departure difficult. Bad references, whispers to potential employers, the kind of subtle sabotage that powerful men excel at. I ended up at a much smaller company, making less money, doing less prestigious work. Sophie was confused. She did not understand why I was throwing away my career. I could not explain it to her, not without telling her everything, so I let her think I was having some sort of midlife crisis. Maybe I was, or maybe I was finally starting to wake up. My father passed away this morning. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. My mother was on the other side, crying softly. The machines beeped their final alerts, and then silence. He never regained full consciousness after our conversation. He never got to know if I took his advice. But in those final moments, as his eyes fluttered open one last time, I could swear he was looking at me with something like hope. "I'm going to tell him, Dad," I whispered. "I'm going to make it right." His eyes closed, his hand went limp, and he was gone. The funeral is in 4 days. Danny does not know yet. I have not called him. I needed to do this confession first, needed to have this meeting tomorrow before anything else. After my father was pronounced dead, I drove to the hospital parking garage and sat in my car for 2 hours. I thought about my father's life, his achievements, his regrets, the distance between who he wanted to be and who he became. I thought about how easily I had followed in his footsteps, making different mistakes but arriving at the same place. A man dying with more regrets than memories worth keeping. I do not want that to be my ending. Sophie called 4 times while I sat there. I finally answered on the 5th call. "Marcus, where are you? Your mother said your father passed. I'm so sorry." "Sophie," I said slowly, "when I get home, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago." She was quiet for a moment. "Okay," she finally said. "I'll be here." So that is what I am facing. Tomorrow I confess to Danny. Tomorrow night I confess to Sophie. And then, whatever happens next, I will finally be living in truth instead of hiding behind lies. I do not expect forgiveness from either of them. Danny has every right to hate me forever. Sophie has every right to leave me. And honestly, it might be the best thing for her. She deserves a partner who can be fully present. And I do not know if I can ever be that person. The damage I have done to my own psyche might be irreparable, but this is not about what I expect or what I deserve. This is about what is right. For 27 years, Danny was my closest friend. For 7 of those years, I have carried the knowledge of how I betrayed him. That knowledge has poisoned everything in my life. My career, my marriage, my relationship with myself. I am tired of the poison. I am tired of waking up at 3 a.m. with my heart pounding, trapped in nightmares about what I did. I am tired of flinching every time someone mentions loyalty or trust or friendship. I am tired of the performative happiness, the forced smiles, the elaborate pretense that I am a decent human being. Maybe I am not a decent human being. Maybe what I did permanently disqualifies me from that category. But I can at least be an honest one, starting now. The thing I have learned carrying this burden for so long is that betrayal does not just damage the victim. It destroys the betrayer too. Maybe not in visible ways, not in ways that others can see, but internally, the corrosion is relentless. Every lie I told to cover my betrayal required another lie to support it. Every relationship I formed afterward was compromised by the secret I was keeping. Every moment of happiness was undercut by the knowledge of what I had done to achieve it. I thought I was getting away with it. I thought I was the clever one, the winner in this situation. But there are no winners in betrayal. There is only damage, spreading outward like ripples in a pond, touching everything and everyone in its path. Danny's life was damaged. Rachel's life was damaged. Emma grew up watching her father struggle with depression and loss. And my life was damaged too, not as visibly, not as sympathetically, but just as profoundly. I became a hollow man, a ghost wearing human clothes, going through the motions of existence without ever truly living. Every smile was a performance. Every "I'm fine" was a lie. Every connection I made was limited by the secret I refused to share. This is the cost of betrayal that no one warns you about. It does not just hurt others. It empties you out until there is nothing left but guilt and shame and the desperate hope that someday, somehow, you can find your way back to being human again. I do not know if that is possible for me, but I have to try. Tomorrow, I will sit on that bench and look Danny in the eyes. I will tell him everything: Victor's manipulation, my jealousy, the information I provided, the ways I guided him toward failure even as I pretended to be his friend. I will not make excuses. I will not minimize what I did. I will simply tell the truth and accept whatever consequences come. If he never speaks to me again, I will understand. If he tells Rachel and they decide to share my shame with the world, I will accept it. If he needs to scream at me, to call me every name I deserve, to express the full depth of his justified rage, I will sit there and take it, because I owe him that. I owe him the opportunity to respond to the truth. For 7 years, he has been living with an incomplete story, thinking his failure was due to market forces and bad luck and circumstance. He deserves to know it was not. He deserves to know that someone who claimed to love him chose to destroy him. And then, whatever relationship we might have going forward, if any, will at least be built on honesty instead of deception. I think about the kid who walked up to me on that playground 27 years ago. The kid with the messy hair and the gap-toothed grin who said, "You look like you need a friend." That kid did not judge me. He did not test me. He did not make me earn his friendship through proving my worth. He just saw a lonely boy and decided to change his life with a simple act of kindness. I have spent 7 years repaying that kindness with betrayal. But maybe, just maybe, I can spend whatever years I have left trying to become someone worthy of the friendship he offered me so freely when we were children. Not by seeking forgiveness, not by expecting redemption, but by finally choosing truth over lies, by finally choosing honesty over convenience, by finally choosing to be the kind of person Danny always believed I could be, even when I proved him wrong again and again. My father is dead. My marriage is probably over. My career is a shadow of what it once was. And in a few hours, I will destroy the last remnants of my closest friendship by confessing the truth about what I did. But for the first time in 7 years, I feel something other than guilt and shame. I feel ready to stop hiding, ready to face consequences, ready to begin the long, painful process of rebuilding myself from the ashes of who I became. I do not know what comes next. I do not know if there is any path back to wholeness after what I have done. I do not know if Danny will ever forgive me, or if Sophie will stay, or if I will ever be able to forgive myself. But I know this: I am done being a coward. I am done letting fear dictate my choices. I am done running from the truth. Danny deserved better than what I gave him. He deserved a best friend who celebrated his success instead of envying it. He deserved a brother who had his back instead of stabbing it. He deserved 27 years of loyalty repaid with 27 years of loyalty, not 7 years of betrayal and silence. I cannot go back and undo what I did. I cannot return his company to him. I cannot erase the depression he suffered or the dreams he had to abandon. I cannot give him back the years of professional fulfillment that were stolen from him, but I can give him the truth, and I can spend whatever time I have left trying to become someone who would never do such a thing again. Someone who has learned finally that success means nothing if it comes at the cost of your integrity. Someone who understands that the people who love you are the only things that truly matter in this world. It is too late for Danny and me to have the friendship we once had. That bridge is burned, and I am the one who set it on fire. But maybe, if I am very lucky, we can build something new. Something smaller, something more cautious, but something real. Or maybe not. Maybe the damage is too deep. Maybe some wounds cannot heal. Either way, I will have done the right thing. Finally, after 7 years of cowardice, I will have chosen courage. That has to be enough. It is all I have left to give. The sun is coming up now. I have been writing all night, pouring this confession onto the page, trying to capture every detail, every emotion, every shameful truth. In a few hours, I will shower and put on clean clothes and drive to that park. I will sit on that bench beneath the old oak tree where Danny and I once planned our futures with such optimism and hope, and I will tell him what I did. I will tell him I cheated my closest friend. I will tell him I never fixed what I broke. And I will ask him, not for forgiveness, but for the chance to finally be honest with the person who deserved my honesty most. This is my confession. This is my truth. This is the story of how I became the villain and lived with it for 7 years before finding the courage to speak. I do not know what happens next, but whatever it is, I will face it, because I am done hiding, and it is time, finally, to come home. 3 weeks later, I am writing this final entry from a rented apartment on the other side of the city. Sophie and I are separated. She is keeping the house while we work out the details. She did not scream or cry when I told her the truth. She just looked at me with this expression of profound sadness and said, "I always knew there was something. I just didn't know it was this." She is processing. I am giving her space. Maybe in time we can rebuild something. Maybe not. Either way, I am grateful for her willingness to listen, to try to understand, even if understanding does not mean forgiving. My father's funeral was last week. More people came than I expected. Former colleagues, distant relatives, friends from his golf club. They spoke about his achievements, his professional success, his dedication to his work. They did not speak about his regrets. They did not know about them, but I do, and I am trying to learn from his mistakes instead of repeating them. As for Danny, the meeting happened. I told him everything, and his response surprised me. He cried. Not with rage, as I expected, but with something that looked almost like relief. He said he had always wondered if there was more to what happened. He said the systematic nature of his company's destruction had never quite made sense to him. He said that knowing the truth, as painful as it was, actually helped him let go of the self-doubt he had carried for years. Then he asked me a question I did not expect. Why now? After all this time, why are you telling me now? I told him about my father, about his dying words, about the years of guilt and the realization that I could not carry the secret anymore. Danny nodded slowly. He was quiet for a long time. And then he said something that broke me completely. I don't forgive you, Marcus. I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did, it cost me everything I had built. It changed my family's life in ways you can't fully understand. I nodded, accepting this. But, he continued, I'm glad you told me. It took courage to do this, and maybe we can find a way forward. Not to what we were, that's gone, but to something new, something honest. We sat on that bench for another hour, talking about everything and nothing, about our childhood, about our dreams, about the ways life had surprised and disappointed us both. When we finally stood to leave, Danny extended his hand. I shook it. And for the first time in 7 years, the weight on my chest felt slightly lighter. We are not friends again. I do not know if we ever will be, but we are no longer strangers bound by a lie. We are two men who shared a history, made mistakes, caused pain, and are now trying to find a way to coexist with the truth between us. It is not a happy ending. Real life rarely has those. But it is an honest ending, and that, I have learned, matters more than I ever understood. I am starting therapy next week, real therapy, where I tell the truth instead of hiding behind deflections. I am looking for ways to make amends, not to Danny specifically, since he has asked for space, but to the world in general. I am volunteering with a nonprofit that helps small business owners navigate challenges. I am trying to use whatever expertise I have to help people instead of exploit them. It is not enough. It will never be enough. What I did cannot be balanced or undone, but I can try to be better every day for the rest of my life, and maybe that is what redemption actually looks like. Not a single dramatic moment of forgiveness, but a lifetime of small choices. Choosing honesty over deception, choosing kindness over ambition, choosing the hard right thing over the easy wrong one. I failed at that for so long. I let jealousy and fear and weakness turn me into someone I despised. But I am trying now. Finally, after 7 years, I am trying. Danny's daughter Emma is 14 now. I saw a photo on social media. She is beautiful, bright-eyed, full of potential. Danny posted something about how proud he is of her, how she is becoming an amazing young woman. He survived what I did to him. His family survived. They are building something new and good, despite the pain I caused. Maybe I can do the same. Maybe there is still time. Maybe the kid who walked up to a lonely boy on a playground and said, "You look like you need a friend," will one day be able to look at me and see something worth saving. That is my hope. That is what keeps me going. Not forgiveness, not redemption, just the possibility, the smallest, most fragile possibility of becoming someone worth knowing again. This is how I cheated my